Greetings to one and all who have joined the live stream. Today we have the third expert talk in Dr. A.K. Singh Literary Club, organized by Department of English, Bhaktakavi Narsimha Mehta University, Junagadh. The Literary Club was inaugurated in the loving memory of late Dr. Avdesh Kumar Singh sir by the department and the esteemed presence of Dr. Kiran Singh Madam, who is also the advisor of Sri Aurobindo Internal Life Center, Oro University, Surat. Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Dr. Atul H. Bapodra sir, Dr. Ravi Jhala sir from Saurashtra University, and Professor Dr. Firoz Sheikh sir, Head of the Department English, Bhaktakavi Narsimha Mehta University, on 19th March 2025. My name is Varun Pandya, currently a research scholar at department. I gladly welcome you all in today's expert talk. Today we should feel privileged to have Dr. Dushyant Nimavat sir as a channelizing force for delivering today's session. If I introduce Nimavat sir briefly, then he is a professor at the Department of English, Gujarat University. He is providing his humble service to the academia for last 26 years. He is associated with 27 national and international journals as a member of the editorial board. He has 52 research papers and 14 books credited to his credit. He is a member in the Board of Studies at BKMNU Junagadh, Kutch University, Atmiya University, and CU Shah University. He is also a member of Executive Council for Indian Association for Canadian Studies also. His areas of expertise are comparative literature, critical theory, textual criticism, cultural studies, American literature, film studies, etc. He has delivered more than 70 invited lectures at various nationally reputed institutions. He has successfully guided many students for PhD and MPhil. He has two patents registered along with the team of English teachers of Gujarat. He has received three national and two international awards for his contribution to research and teaching. Sir, I request you to please begin this session and enlighten us with your nuanced views on modern poetry.
Thank you. Uh, Firstly, I really feel privileged because this is a series that dedicates Dr. A.K. Singh's gigantic personality. We were fortunate to have him as our guru, as Professor Sheikh was. And of course, he was like right a big banyan tree under which we all birds like people, right, small birds like people could get sheltered, and definitely we received so much, not only the knowledge of literature, but at the same time how one should behave with the students, right, when one becomes a teacher, right? So I'm really, really fortunate to be here when his name is associated, right? So I feel privileged in a way. There's a bit correction that I had a talk with, of course, Professor Sheikh as well as Dr. Joshi, that modern poetry, I think, was dealt by somebody else. So I would like to discuss cultural studies. I had a discussion with Professor Sheikh that the objective behind this session is to uh, actually prepare students for NET and SAT, right? And ultimately leading them to go for research also. So why not taking up something which is discussed a lot, right, in the field of literature nowadays, and especially even NET examination, you will find lot many questions are asked, right, on this, especially the theory. Right, so I am going to discuss cultural studies instead of modern poetry. Uh, if you look at right? You can say that uh, we talk a lot about different cultures, right? So around us, when we look at, uh, we have, suppose, our own traditions, we have our own languages, we have our, you can say, our own, right, choice of brands, you can say, right? So in that sense, we have our own identity. And when you talk about identity, it is nothing but it is, right, culture. So if you define it, what is cultural studies, right? Then ultimately cultural studies is an interdisciplinary field. So it examines the ways culture creates and transforms individual experiences, right? So whatever your experiences are when you are born in a particular culture, then how it transforms you, how it changes you, or how it changes your personality or identity. So that, you can say, encounter that you have in your daily lives, social relationships, and other power structures, that you can say, that comes under the umbrella of cultural studies. Of course, it emerged in the mid 20th century. You have, of course, the backdrop of sociology, anthropology, media studies, and of course, literary theory as well there. But one needs to understand that when we talk about cultural studies, it is not only limited to literature. It has its root in sociology also, in society also, anthropology, media studies, right? And in the course of the discussion, I would definitely would like to discuss certain things like media also. So how culture shapes identity and society. If one wants to study, then it can be studied under the umbrella term of cultural studies. What is the role of ideology and power in cultural practices? If you want to study that, then again you have to refer to cultural studies umbrella. And then the intersection of culture with race, gender, class, and nation. And if you talk about race, gender, class, and nation, each culture, right, you will always find has different flavor, right? So in that sense, it is out and out interdisciplinary field which touches upon so many other fields, and therefore sometimes to get the grasp of, you can say, the theory is little difficult also. Now, if you look at how it came into the picture, then early phase that you can identify 1950s to 1960s, you have some literary figures, theorists, who talked about it, referred, you can say. Richard Hogarth, suppose, the uses of literacy in 1957, and Raymond Williams, Culture and Society in 1958, and E.P. Thompson also, The Making of the English Working Class in 1963. Together, actually, they focused more on working class culture and experience. This is just the beginning. That's why the focus was on working class, their culture and experiences. And of course, they made the critique of mass culture and cultural elitism, since their focus was limited to working class only. And therefore, it was limited, you can say, in the beginning. Middle phase, you can say, Stuart Hall, one of the towering personalities who headed, right, the Birmingham Center, where, of course, later you can say his contribution to diaspora discourse also is great. Ultimately, now the focus is no more on particular class, but it was on structuralism and semiotics. So analysis of media, youth, subcultures, race, these kind of things came into picture. Along with it, you can say development of reception theory that also emerged. And of course, Gramsci's concept of hegemony came into picture, and it changed the whole course of, you can say, cultural studies. So in that sense, Birmingham Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies, that is CCCCS, right? So that became a hub where these kind of activities, right, took place. And I think this phase asked a very pertinent question, and the question was that who controls the media? Why do some voices get heard? Why some voices are not heard? Why some only? So, basis on media, youth, you can say race, subcultures, those things were interpreted. And ultimately, it led to a proper kind of discourse that you can say what we have now, that is contemporary phase 1990s to present. As we can say that a lot of water has flown, right, in the Ganges after that. So now it is little difficult even sometimes to identify that this particular aspect only is being discussed, right, under the umbrella term of cultural studies, because it is so vast. If you just take, suppose, diaspora, then in diaspora only, that you can say some theories like migration theory can be studied. So it's a huge, you can say, area. And therefore, perhaps I think for the students to understand, firstly, I think all students usually find it little difficult to deal with theories, criticism. I think classical theories are easy to understand, but later modern contemporary theories are little difficult to, or postmodern theories are little difficult to understand, simply because they are not only limited to literary circles. They touch upon so many other fields. Suppose anthropology. Now anthropology is science also and sociology also, right? It's a combination. And because of that, I think for a literary student to understand and grasp the meaning of it becomes little difficult. So cultural studies is also one of that. But contemporary phase of 1990s and present, you can say up to present, then, because initially, as we talked about this, right, Birmingham Center, so in UK only it got discussed, but later on, you can say global expansion beyond UK also happened. More focus right now was on post-colonialism and globalization. Many countries became free, right, from the rule of the Britishers, and that triggered, you can understand that post-colonialism came into picture. And because of that, it happened that there was a kind of reaction. Then why not talking about our own culture? Right? So you can say myself and the other kind of discourse started. Of course, we are talking about now contemporary phase, so digital culture. You can't deny that a culture, Suppose today when you use social media, you are a part of that culture. I may be sitting over here in Ahmedabad, urban space. You may be sitting there in Junagadh. Our spaces are different. But digitally, when we are united, it creates a culture. So that culture is very different than the culture. Right? Today you see that on social media, right, some youngsters, they are, right, you can say, preparing such content on, you can say, YouTube or Facebook or Insta, in such a way that you may not get the idea that this person belongs to a particular region. Yes, through language you can get the idea, sometimes through attire you can get the idea, but what makes us all equal, the space, is that digital space, and it has its own unique culture. Intersectionality and identity politics, those concepts also emerged. I am going to discuss certain points only, and I'll of course share the PPT and some material also, right, with the department, so that you can circulate among yourselves. Institutional establishment in universities also worldwide happened. Center for Cultural Studies were established. Even in India, right, in, you can say, 2000, around 2000 and 2005, even UGC, in one of the minutes of, right, a meeting, when they discussed about the future of higher education in India, there was a remark that all departments that teach literature and language should be converted into the Department of Cultural Studies. The reason behind this logic was that language and literature are part and parcel of a culture. Culture is a bigger umbrella under which language and literature also exist. So, in isolation, if you study literature, if you study language, that is not enough. And that's why, you know that, right? When we study literature, suppose, inevitably we have to study, right, the culture of that particularly literary text. Suppose if you study uh, any text, right, any novel written by Thomas Hardy, then essentially he talks about Wessex, right, England, and that is also a particular, right, kind of flavor that it brings in. If you have read Mayor of Casterbridge or Tess, you would realize that the culture is very different. It's not geographical only, but you can say geography sometimes brings in the changes in the attitude also, right? So in that sense, these kind of, you can say, thoughts emerged that such institutions can also be established. So they were founded during that time. I'm skipping this. Yes, now this is very important. What is culture? Why study it? Right. So of course you can understand that culture word itself, right? It comes from, of course, Latin word colere, Colere, and its meaning is to cultivate or grow. Right. Of course, it started with, you can say, a reference in uh, agriculture, but then of course it was applied, right, as a means of cultivating, right, the Yes. Am I back again? Yes, am I audible again? I got disconnected in a way. Yes, thank you. Uh, yes. So now I think whatever art and education, right, that we think about, then everything is connected to culture now. So in this, of course, I wish to talk about when you talk about culture, inevitably you talk about identity, you talk about ideology, you talk about representation, right? And these are the things that one can study under the umbrella of cultural studies. So as I discussed that, the word came from that. Now culture is not fixed, it is lived, contested and reproduced. And that's why I think, right, sometimes it is dangerous, and usually we elderly people do that, that this is not our culture, right? In our times we never did that. We need to understand, we elders need to understand that cultures get shaped with interaction, with contest, and it is reproduced, right? So whatever today your generation, I'm addressing the students, so your generation, what you see, what you observe, what you experience, what you think is the product of current time. Now if we say that it was not there in our times, it means we are discarding this idea and we think that culture is fixed. We need to understand that no, culture is not fixed. It is lived, it is reproduced, right? So in that sense we need to understand that mixture of material is involved, food and dress, these basic things, to some abstract things like values, beliefs. Now just think about it. Can you think of something cultural that changed drastically in your lifetime? When you were a child, right? When you were born. Of course, right? I think here all PG students are connected, I believe, or research scholars. Now, ranging, you can say from 22 years to 25, 26 or more. Now, it means more than 20 years you have experienced life. So, in your lifetime, how did something came up and changed your culture? And you would find that a lot of things have changed your culture. Now that culture may be your food, that culture may be your dress, that culture may be your values, that culture may be your beliefs. But it definitely, suppose in the study of English literature, it may happen that you come from a very orthodox family, but you study a text where queer community is portrayed. You talk about gay people. Now, when for the first time, if that text is being discussed by a professor in the classroom, you may feel little, right? You can say strange that how such things can be discussed in the class, in public. But later on, right, you come in terms, right, with the idea, and then you try to understand it. and for you that becomes nature. Now it means culturally you evolved, right, in a way that your ideology evolved. So if you think about it, then there are so many things, right? I mean, these are some questions that you should think about. Of course, when we talk about cultural studies, we should always remember Raymond Williams, his definition of culture, because he gave us three, right, meanings. Culture as an ideal, it means the best of human thought, you can say. As a documentary record, that is books, films, you can say. And as lived experience, how people actually live and express themselves. So three things which are very important. In a way, culture as an ideal, as a documentary record, and as a lived experience. So he believed in the third one, in a way, the most important. That is how people actually live and express themselves. So the lived experience, when you live actually, that experience would enrich your life, and it will change your perspective towards something. So the question, which of these definitions do you see in action? This general intellectual and aesthetic development, a particular way of life, artistic production and practice. So in everyday life, if you look at either at least one of it, when we right from the beginning, when we wake up in the morning and read newspaper, you see these things in action, right? Because you can say that there are some records that you come across, there are some best human thoughts that you come across, and there are, you can say, some lived experiences that you come across. Then culture as entanglement, because culture is messy, right? It's not pure or isolated. It connects history, politics, language, emotion, and memory. Right? If you look at, you would always find that lot of material, mix of material, and abstract components like suppose memory, emotion. These are all abstracts. Those things get mixed, and that becomes culture. Suppose language is both a set of rules, material, and a social identity marker, which is abstract. So when material and abstract get together, there is culture. How does food or clothing reflect both ideology and material needs? Suppose food, clothing, right? Usually, when you see somebody taking food, you can get the idea about person's ideology. Suppose a person is eating in a plate, somebody is leaving behind some food, not completing the portion. Somebody is completing the portion. Now you can get the idea about ideology, material needs, right? So, in that sense, it is material and abstract both. Now, mutability and movement of culture. Culture travels, right? And it is organic, ever changing, as Raymond Williams describes, right, returning from World War II to a society that no longer spoke the same language. He stated that after Second World War, in fact, the society never spoke the same language. The language changed. Now, the reason behind this statement is this only that after some experiences, mankind even has some different connotations, some cultural references of that time. And therefore, right, when he said that the society never spoke the same language doesn't mean that they were speaking English and then started speaking some another language. It means the, what you can say, underlying meaning of the words also got changed, right? So these kind of shifts happen because of some events in the history. World War was such, that because of that, right, there are some movements like existentialism that emerged because it was a great shock that a man can kill another man, lot of devastation at a mass level. Now you can understand that you would not speak the same language. It means the connotations got changed. Now, just you think about it, just right. I mean, some cultural shifts. We just had the anniversary of COVID lockdown, right? And that was for the first time, right? You know that the mankind had such an event, an occasion when everything was shut down, had to be shut down, right? And you know that it was a very, very different time. All of you have experienced that, right? You were there, all of you, and therefore you know that it has changed entirely the culture. Today I am right sitting here in Ahmedabad and addressing you. Perhaps I think it is because of COVID. Before that, of course, there used to be Zoom. I know that. Before that, I did use it, right? But after that, you know that it was during that time that we started using technology a lot. It changed the culture. Today, we are very comfortable using technology simply because of that. So it helped, right, in changing, you can say, the scenario. Good or bad, that of course later after uh, research, you can say, you can think about. Now, sometimes when we talk about culture, there are certain right references of high and low culture. So, is it this binary, low and high? Is it valid? I can give you an example. Suppose Shakespeare, right? When in his time, we are talking about Elizabethan age, in right his plays, you know that there used to be pit class. Now, when in pit class, of course, laborers, right, workers, low class people used to come with a bottle of wine in their hands, already drunkards, you can say, right? Now, you can understand that it was so popular as movies, right? You can say any masala movie of Bollywood here. So everybody would go there. It was so popular. So sometimes we say that when something is popular, it is cheap, it is low. But at present, we are talking about 16th century, where Shakespeare got his dramas performed, when he wrote his dramas. Now today, when we study them, we tag them that they are classical dramas. When we say they are classical dramas, it means high dramas. Now, when you actually perform them, it was low because it was popular at that time. But now you are saying that they are classical, so they are high. So these changing parameters, you can say, of culture, they also need to be looked at sometimes, right? And that's why I always I don't say, right, I don't deny that there are some you can say reasons behind it, but when some scholarly people argue that you cannot suppose do research on Chetan Bhagat's novel, I simply would not accept 100%. The simple reason that he is also a writer, he may be popular, but he's a writer. We need to understand. He writes, and anyone has the right to study the literature that he writes. And then, of course, being a research scholar, a researcher, a scholarly person, you have all the right to criticize him and say that whatever he writes doesn't have the value and doesn't carry the aesthetics that we always discuss in literature. But you can't deny that, no, right? Outrightly, you cannot say that, no, 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 you cannot work on Chetan Bhagat's novel. Because what you call low today may be high tomorrow. That we have come to know through the example of Shakespeare. That may happen. This is because we are always in flux. We always have the changing culture. And that's why when we study, right, culture at that time, one needs to be very clear about that it is always changing. Now, culture and identity. Now, identity is shaped by articulation, right? So, in that sense, culture shapes how we see ourselves, right? And how we see gender, suppose religion, nationality, language, all this stuff. It tells us, you can say, how we are and how to behave. But we also shape our culture. So it's, you can say, a two-way street. Culture shapes us and change our identity, and we also in return change the culture, right? So in that sense, culture and identity go hand in hand. Can a subversive identity eventually become hegemonic, that is dominant? You can think of some examples. I'm not going deep into it because we have, I mean, other things to discuss. But these are some of the points that I would like you to think later as well. Now, types of identities in culture. Now, identities can be personal, social also, and cultural also. When we are in Gujarat, we are Gujaratis. When you are in Kathiawad, you are Kathiawadi. When you are in Junagadh, you are Junagadhi. Right? When you are outside India, you are an Indian. Now it means, right, that you can say that at personal level, at social level, at cultural level, you are always carrying your identity. At that time, they can be fixed or fluid. Both the things can happen. Suppose when you are there in Gujarat, your Gujarati identity is fixed. It is not in flux. But as soon as you step out of the boundaries of Gujarat, it is in flux. You might identify yourself, right, as suppose a feminist who believes in feminism, right? So these are all tags, you can say, you carry with you. These are, and they become your identities, right? So some of, you can say, the terms that are used, hegemonic, suppose dominant, it means, so it has to do with the power. As suppose us culture has that force. Of course it has to do with the economy of the nation. As Britishers, when they ruled, right, and when they tried spreading their imperialism, At that time, of course, they were dominant. So whatever they did at that time, you know that they were very powerful things, and other cultures also adopted it. Then, of course, subordinate, that is suppressed. Complicit, that is supports hegemony, that is the power, you can say. Subversive, resists hegemony. Now, if you say that there is popular culture, then you can categorize some identity types. Then you would realize that you also fit into some types, right? So when we talk about our own cultures, we also become subtypes and types sometimes. Now, culture is a product of material and ideological conditions. Think of how art, religion, or media is influenced by economics. Ultimately, you know that money makes the society run. And because of that, if you talk about art, if you talk about religion or media, they are greatly influenced by economics. And therefore, culture is produced, not given. Today, when we go to some foreign countries, Gujaratis are known because they are good at business. Because what they produce, it is not that you are only Gujarati, so you are recognized, but they have seen other Gujaratis prospering, right? So they have, you can say, their own experiences. Of course, very important aspect, Marxism and cultural studies. It has to do, of course, with, you can say, uh, directly, right, about, you can say, economy. So Marxist theory, it says culture reflects economic and class structures. All of you must have studied Marxism, and all of you know that equality was the foundation, right, in the thought of Marxism. It asks who owns the means of cultural production. So, right, so when there is cultural production, suppose somebody is producing a movie, directing a movie, then that person is is, you can say, a producer of the culture also. Now it depends entirely on how that is projected, how it comes on the screen. And you know that you have seen such movies, right? Kabir Singh and other movies that may influence negatively also the cultures. So it has to do with, right? You can say the kind of cultural production that you have. Another thing that you need to understand, that why are some cultural forms valued over others? Why particular thing? Suppose in matter of movies, that happens. Art movies, which as students of literature we may value that, okay, they are far better than other movies, but they may not earn that much, right? While you have a very, right, kind of masala kind of movie, which may earn you suppose 500 crore rupees or 700 crore rupees. Now, what is valued in the society, in cultures? Of course, it has to do with economy also, right? So in that sense, you can say it has direct relationship with the industry also, culture. So what we see now, right, that you need to understand that we do it sometimes, right? I mean, our perception also in looking at the things also in that those terms also, only that economic value or monetary value only we look at. Of course, these are some of, you can say, uh, the movements or within that, where Frankfurt School had. right? Contribution. Thinkers like Adorno, Horkheimer, uh, right? They talked about mass produced culture, that is TV, radio, cinema, and they talked about its impact, how positively people can be addressed and positively convinced about certain things. So they called this under Frankfurt School uh, the industry, the culture industry, TV, radio, and cinema, which turned, right, of course, art into a product, of course, for profit, not for thinking, right? So commodification, you can say, was made during that time. So we can ask question: is entertainment today suppose truly creative, or is it mass produced comfort? And as I gave you the example, suppose we value being students of literature who study literature or understand the minute aspects of art, would value art movies. But if you ask a person who is walking down the street, would always talk about mass produced movies, right? So that is the mass production of that culture which he or she is the part of. Then I'm skipping this. Of course, I am going to share the material, right? Blockbuster and military origins. So in military also, of course, these things were discussed, and um, in a way, military roots, especially how government backs up the military, how they fund, right? So these things were also discussed there, and how movies also or social media also promotes it, right? And the idea of, or idea, you can say, idealizing war or violence, right, of military was also discussed. And when you study under the umbrella of cultural studies, you can definitely ask certain question that uh, what is the agenda over here? Because when we talk about such war or promotion of, you can say, nationalism too much, then it promotes commercial value of violence ultimately, right? But it has again to do with economy, popularity, and less of, you can say, artistic uh, kind of thing. um, Altitude has given these two ISA, that is family, education, media, that is ideological state apparatus, and repressive state apparatus. These two tools, you can say, he has given. And there he talks about family, education, and media in ISA, and in RSA he talks about police and military. And of course he says that ISA, that is family, education, and media, they teach conformity. They teach us what to do, how can you set boundaries for. And RSA, that is police and military, they enforce it, right? So in that sense, these criteria also would help you to understand the culture, especially the war culture that takes place right somewhere in the text when you study under this umbrella. I'm skipping a bit. Yes. Then mass culture. When you talk about the standardization of culture, at that time, mass culture can make everything feel the same. TV shows, products, music, they all follow, you can say, the same formula, right? You can understand, suppose music. Then the same kind of music is produced to appeal the mass, because earlier also it appealed the mass. So standardization limits creativity and diversity. So there is a clear cut, you can say, formula. Now you look at some movies of Bollywood. They have a very clear, in 90s, very clear cut, you can say, formula of successful movies. Hero is poor, heroine is rich. The father, I mean, both hero and heroine meet somewhere outside. Both of them, right, are now in love. And the father is rich, so he thinks that no, the hero, right, is not will not be able to live, right. I mean, in a way, would not be able to raise the wife in a better manner, and therefore would put some condition that you, if you earn this much money, then only, right, I'll get my daughter married to you, and the struggle starts. This is the formula, right? And in each formula you will see the same. But what happens because of that? It limits the creativity. People will not try something new. In music also that happens, in writing also that happens. So you can check the quality in, you can say, reference to creativity, innovation, using this criteria when you study under, right, this cultural studies aspect. Subcultural resistance that I discussed earlier, economy I discussed. Now, affect, emotions, and bodily experiences. Right? So, in that sense, culture isn't just ideas, it's feelings also. Right? It is not just simply idea that, okay, this is culture. You feel it, you experience it. Music, movies, fashion, even literature, right? They all involve, you can say, emotions. So, affect theory studies how these feelings shape our identities and behaviors. So, when you apply this theory on literature, you can study that how our identities and behaviors are shaped because of our feelings. So, affect and literature can also be studied at length, of course. Memory, of course, plays a very vital role in matter of culture. Our memories, personal or collective, shape how we see our cultures. Right? Suppose India, that once we were also, right, you can say, colonized, we were not free. So that is always there in our back of mind. So our history, that is collective memory, and what is now cultural identity, both of them go together. And festivals, suppose monuments and family stories, they carry cultural memory, right? You always have, suppose, some monuments. When you look at them, you have some stories, you have some history, some memory, and they help the communities to stay connected. Right? You have always, being an Indian, you have visualized that on 15th August and 26th January, the prime minister or the president, right, would address the Indian citizens from the Red Fort. Now, that idea itself, because that monument is the testimony that now we are free. Because the first, right, I think all of you must have watched that video when our flag was hoisted for the first time. So that is still there in our memory. And that keeps us together. That gives you, right? Suppose if you visit Amritsar and you visit that place where people were massacred, then you get the idea that, okay, right? So many people lost their lives fighting for our nation, for freedom. So this idea strengthens the idea of India, that also you are also a part of that culture. So that cultural identity becomes stronger, right? So staying together is also one of the aspects that you can definitely study. Terry Eagleton talks about values. Values are historically contingent, not universal. And he says that culture involves values, what we think is good, true, or beautiful. Now, just look at these ideas, think about these ideas: good, true, beautiful. Right? So, if you say this is good, you have some reference of your culture, right, in your mind. When you say this is beautiful, you have some reference. Now you can understand that in a country, right, from African continent, a black girl is also beautiful in their culture. So the idea of beauty gets changed with the culture. Right? So in that sense, ultimately what Terry Eagleton says, that when you talk about values, they may not be universal. Yeah, right. We say that the values are universal, but no, in matter of cultural values, they are not, right, always the same. They differ across societies and change over time. That one needs to understand. So, are there eternal values, or do they all evolve? Right? So, today, suppose when you study, there's a professor who works with Ashoka University, Professor Gill. He has written a book on Shakespeare, and the title of the book is Masala Shakespeare. And what he says, right, is this only, that if Shakespeare would have born in this time, then he would have definitely asked the director of Bollywood to make movies from his dramas. It means, and his theory, right, what Professor Gill has to say, that what he talked about, these are all masala dramas, packed up with everything which can be the formula of a very successful masala Bollywood movie. So if we look at that, that even Shakespeare may lose value in future society. That may happen. What is good, what is bad, what is beautiful, it gets changed with the society, right? And so many things. I think when you study English literature, those kind of things come when you study restoration literature, suppose. Right? You know that some of the things you don't agree to, simply because we live in such a nation where our culture is very different. Of course, being a student of literature, we shouldn't be critical, right? But we may pass on comment, but our comment should be based on the lived experiences of people rather than simply being critical because of orthodoxy, right? There is a difference between orthodoxy and having the experience of living somewhere outside. I think people usually criticize Western countries simply because of those not having experiences and believing that there is free environment and licentiousness, but it is not so. Right? Their culture is different, values are different. That's why this is a very important, right, aspect what Terry Eagleton suggests. Representation and power, of course, representation. Who can be represented? Whoever is powerful. Today, and especially now, of course, we have entered into another age, web series zone, you can say. But earlier than that, TV serials. If you look at when we had, I mean, just the emergence of these digital channels, Z, Star, inevitably all such serials had rich class people only portrayed. Now it means who are represented? Is there a poor person represented? No, the rich class person. Why? Because there is fascination. It can only attract, that class only can attract all other people, right? So that is representation of particular, you can say, class. So what is shown and what is hidden, that is very important, and it has to do with power only. Whoever is powerful will be visible, whoever is weaker will be hidden. So that is also an important aspect. If you compare in terms of media, what is now shown to you, of course powerful things are shown to you, some things which are weaker are not shown to you. Cultural text and ideology, art, literature, media, right? You can say um, they are identity marker, you can say, and therefore critical reading reveals power dynamics, right? You can say art, literature, media can uphold and challenge ideologies. If you suppose analyze any recent movie or advertisement, that is there any ideological message, right? You would always find that there is some ideological message only when a power structure wants to convey that, right? So power is always behind development of such cultures which are shown to you on screen or on pages. Now you can say culture is encoded in dress, language, food, entertainment, right? Uh, in a way we have discussed these things, but cultural performance, right, is very important. That how things are right performed. I mean, cultural performance is portrayed at the level of everyday life experiences. How dress, right, greeting of people, celebration of festivals, these are all performances of culture, you can say. We are always acting out our cultural identities even without realizing it, you can say, and therefore we become, right, you can say, part of our daily routine, where certain, you can say, cultural practices are reflected. So you can think about what part of your daily routine reflects your culture. You would definitely find certain things that right from morning to evening in daily routine, some of the things, not only ideology, but food, dress, customs, right, your behavior would definitely suggest that you belong to a particular culture. Now, reproduction of culture. I'm just completing it just 10 minutes. Culture is passed on through language, rituals, media, and education. Culture survives through repetition and normalization. You can understand that culture has to survive. When suppose Britishers came, we always Indians talk about ancient culture, then of course when Britishers ruled us, and then modern culture. Now when we talk about ancient culture, of course some of the things we could not uh, that help survive, and those things, like suppose education system itself, and I definitely agree to the idea that at that time in ancient India, our education system was very strong, right? But somewhere I think what our education system has become, uh, which is after producing, right? So which is not holistic, which is after producing, or rather preparing people or students for employment only. So there are some issues simply because culture could not survive, right? Educational culture, you can say, could not survive because it was discontinued by the Britishers. But if it is tradition, then tradition becomes natural through practice, as in matter of festivals, right? That happens. And even if suppose you live somewhere in foreign country, usually you find, right, Gujarati celebrating Navratri, suppose, with lot of fervor, even more than sometimes enthusiastic than the Gujaratis over here in Gujarat. The simple reason that they want to be part of this culture, simply because they want to carry forward their tradition so they can be in touch with the culture. Then, of course, which is very important now, digital culture. So, culture and technology, you can say, just think of Instagram, YouTube, or video games. Technology changes how we create and share culture, right? You would always find that it shapes our attention spans, right? That has happened now. We always feel that because of COVID, students started using technology more, started watching YouTube videos, and you can understand that our attention span is lesser now. So when we sit in the classroom, that I always feel the students do not have that attention span. Of course, psychology also has to play a very vital role there, but because of our habits. Now, when we talk about uh, yesterday only, right? One of our students, when he was defending his thesis, he came up with this idea. I mean, it was on Australian drama. So that can we have short dramas of 2-3 minutes only, right? Played on the stage like reels, because now we are used to that, right? Because we do not have patience that much. And suppose 1.5 hour drama, it takes that much time. That's why we have started avoiding it. You may read a short story, but you may not like bulky novel. So these are the things because of technology also. Memes, suppose, reels, blogs, right? These are all cultural texts now. So, are we curating or creating culture online? Curating, hoarding, right? Cultivating it. Or are we producing it, creating it? If you are just consuming it, I think you are curating it. But if you are part and parcel of that production also, then of course you are contributing to it. Now there are, you can say, concepts like digital poetry. Then of course there are some essential issues that can be studied, whether the aesthetic value of Facebook poetry or Insta poetry is the same as we have when an anthology is published, right? So these can be studied, and these are all, you can say, concepts that can come under the umbrella of course, you can say, cultural studies. uh, Role of institution is greater, of course. Schools, media, religion, these are all, you can say, institutions. Museums play a very vital role. uh, they decide what is normal and important, right? Media decides it, schools decide it, religion decides it, right? So in that sense, ultimately, what is normal, what is important, they decide it. They frame, right, what is desirable, what is taboo, what should not be done, right? So just think about it. Which institution shaped your early views when you were in school? There must be a school which played a very vital role in shaping your views about culture, about society. Then you would get some ideas about it. Now, who should define culture? Power usually defines, right, culture, because they decide it. Who should define? Dominant groups decide what is valuable or traditional. Cultural studies challenges this idea. And that's why there is importance that you study cultural studies. That's why it is important that you research on some aspect that we discussed today. And suppose these ideas like elite versus grassroots, center versus margin, right? When we study, suppose the elite discourse, of course, we study about margin. So those concepts also can be studied under the lens of, you can say, cultural studies. Then culture, crisis and change. Of course, culture reacts to crisis. Suppose wars, pandemic, protests, right? So you know that some of the incidents in India only. When you have, suppose, a rape case in Delhi, and then the whole law was formed, right? Or rather repealed. So in that sense, some crisis will always help us to shape the culture. Crisis sometimes, you can say, make us rethink our values, practices and beliefs, right? So it is re-evaluation of, you can say, our values, practices, beliefs. Of course, culture can be site of both trauma and transformation. It can be, of course, both, right? You can understand. So you can think about during pandemic, how did your culture shift? What was the change? And there were definitely, right, if you think, there were lot many changes at that time we thought about, right? So these are some of, right, I have enlisted some of important, you can say, if you want to study, you can study these theories. Of course, we discussed a bit about Raymond Williams, Terry Eagleton, Louis Althusser, Erdor also, Abhishek Purey, right, who works with mm, IIT, and he has also come up with some of the theories, and they can also be studied here. And of course, if you say that, if we explore, right, I mean, the kind of ideas that have been given by these people, then you would definitely come to that conclusion that we have so many, right, tools through which we can study literature under the umbrella of cultural studies, because it is so vast. Here is a list of some theorists and their theories. You can definitely have a look at it. Raymond Williams, Terry Eagleton, right? Then, of course, Franz Fanon, we could not discuss. Judith Butler, initial, you can say, bell hooks, B and H, both of them are small because it is the way that the writer wanted to be written, right? So these are some of the, you can say, pioneers in the theory. It is, of course, little difficult, you can say, that in just an hour or so, or an hour or 15 minutes to discuss the whole uh, right, field of cultural studies. But I can tell you, especially the students uh, who, you can say, study in MA, and those who are pursuing PhD, that this is particularly such a field which is now being discussed a lot, especially now, I think, with NEP 2020, as it also talks about I mean, culture. Then we need to understand cultural studies more, especially some concepts like ethnographical kind of research. Ethnography is one of such, you can say, methodology through which we can dig out genuine kind of research works which can help, right, in fact, to generate the knowledge that we do not have. I can give you an example. Suppose I can call a genuine ethnographical research work that was done by Javachan Meghani when he himself experienced, right? I mean, he himself saw that scene uh, when a girl, right, who is just young girl with a stick in hand and tries to, you can say, defend, right? I mean, against the lion. Now you can understand that it is fidelity to experience. At the same time, how the whole culture works, right? And if you read the poem Charan Kanya I am referring, if you read the poem, you get the idea about the culture, right, of that particular community. The way it is also recited, the way the words move, the rhythm, right, that is there. Now that is nothing but ethnography, right? That you witness, you go to the place, right? And usually that happens that I mean, sitting here in one corner of the room, we generalize so many things that okay, my research findings are these. But have you ever gone to that place? And that's why I think, suppose if you choose a work from England, it may not be possible for you financially to viable, try to visit England and witness or experience that setting. But actually, the, you can say, research questions are in front of you only, right? And you can definitely study those aspects, right, in a better manner simply because they emerge from your own culture. Maybe it may be translation, it may be ethnographical kind of research work, or it may be analytical kind of research work. But ultimately the responses come from your own culture and from your understanding of your own culture. And I think all of you might have understood this thing by now, that it always happens, right, that if you study any American text, British text, they cannot be understood that better as we understand any Indian text better. The simple reason that we have such experiences right from the beginning when we were children, because these are all our lived experiences. So research works also, if that comes from those experiences, they are far more concrete experiences and can be relatable also, right? So as per the guidelines of NEP 2020, I think we should move forward and talk more about these all fine aspects of cultural studies. And we should study, of course, taking some canons as this slide itself shows some theories. But at the same time, in India also, we have some theories that can be studied and compared and contrasted, and we can come up with some good research works. Right? I think I tried my best, right, to cover up most of the things that are there. Uh, the area is so huge that it cannot be summed up in just a session, or, all right, but it may require, there are some good courses available. There is very good course available on NPTEL by Abhishek Pure only. And I mean, they are very good videos and even good material. There is a handbook also, I think, which can be used for your understanding of uh, cultural studies. And in fact, I wanted to study, I mean, I wanted to make you understand that why should you study, simply because even in net examination you would find lot many questions are asked. So this will of course help, of course you need to study further to right, pass the net examination also. Somewhere I think, if I'm hopeful that it might help you, right? So thank you very much. I'm thankful to the Department of English for giving me an opportunity. And as I told that, of course, the talk is dedicated to Dr. A.K. Singh, who was our right beloved teacher. So I'm grateful to the Almighty that I could at least right contribute something in the cause, right, noble cause that the department has taken up. Thank you very much. If you have, of course, questions, you can definitely ask me.
Thank you very much, Nimavat sir, for such an insightful and thought-provoking session. Your knowledge in the
Thank you. My
field of
pleasure.
cultural studies has truly left a prolific impression on us. I am sure everyone here has obtained a new perspective to analyze, interpret, and evaluate culture with your views. The notion you have of giving something new to the eager students is truly reflected by this session, in which blending the cultural studies with film studies was brilliant. Now it is
Thank you.
time for question answer sessions. If anyone has any kind of queries or questions related to this topic, please feel free to put them in the YouTube comment section.
Language shouldn't be a barrier, right? If you are not able to uh, pose your question, right, in English, you can definitely ask me in Gujarati. I am Gujarati only. I can definitely address, right, that in Gujarati also.
Sir, there is a question from Chintan Joshi.
Hmm.
He is asking, we appreciate you taking the time to provide the details on ethnographic research. Could you
Ethnographic,
enlighten
yes.
us?
Yes, I talked about ethnographical kind of research work. It is itself you can say, a vast area, but let me tell you that it has its root in anthropology, how everything comes into existence, right? So you go back into its root, and through interaction with the community, interaction with or interviewing people of that community, you study the text of that community, right, or piece of creation or art of that community. Because what happens when we study something in isolation, sometimes we shut our eyes to the perception why it was created and what was the objective behind its creation. So why not asking the question, right, to the person, or rather the community where the person belongs to. One of my research scholars worked on such ethnographical research work. He worked on, he belongs to that community, Gadalia Luhar, right? It is very much there on Shodh Ganga, the thesis. Now he himself belongs to that community. Now that community used to live, with they accompanied King Rana Pratap, right? And they are all blacksmith, Luhar. So they used to prepare uh, spears, right, and swords for them, for him rather, Rana Pratap. But once it happened that Mughals spread a rumor that he was killed in Rana Pratap was killed, right, in war. So these people got feared that if we are caught, Mughals will kill us. So they fled in all different directions. So the community spread, right? Suppose in Gujarat, in Haryana, in Rajasthan, right? These all states. Now, a very unique practice that this community has is, and they are all oral stories, that any special occasion of the life of a person is celebrated, whether it is birth, death, marriage, then the eldest person of the community would tell a story related to that incident, right, to the community. The eldest person will only do that. Now, these are all oral stories, and you can understand that if it is birth, then there is philosophy of birth in the story. Now, these were all stories, oral stories. So, my research scholar, Dr. Sadev Luhar, now just recently has been appointed as an associate professor at CUG. He first of all documented all these stories. He recorded all the stories, wrote in proper Gujarati as we speak and write now, because the language that this community speaks is mixture of Rajasthani and Gujarati. So what he did was he recorded, he wrote them in proper Gujarati, and then he translated them into English. And he, being the person of that community, interviewed some people, and he wanted to know the insight, the logic behind the practice of telling this story. So this is ethnographical research. Now, firstly, the benefit of this research that you would not find plagiarism, right? Because nobody has done that, right? Nobody can say that you have plagiarized something. This is completely original. Another thing, that you are creating knowledge for other people, that you are giving something new to people. I don't say that everybody should do it, but if you study it and if you find that no, this is one of the things that I should study, then do it. Right? So this is ethnography. I gave this example simply to elaborate that how ethnography works. Now it can work in different manner. If you want to study, suppose, literature that is written in Gir forest, right? So you go to this nest and then interview people, then come to know about stories. They may be oral, document them, translate, and then write inside how you translated them, and again inside that how these stories were created. Right? So, and there you can understand there is again this aspect of representation. There, if there is some story, then what is represented? The community also wants that, okay, this should be represented. Then why they want that this should be represented? Charan Kanya, it means even a young girl, Charan girl can defend herself. Right? So that is representation of that community. Right? So the ethnographical research work works like this. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir, for throwing light. Sir, there is another question from Abhay
Yes.
Odedra.
Yes.
Sir, can you please recommend specific books for better understanding of cultural studies and its important aspects?
I will share at least one book, that NPTEL course, right? And another thing that I will share the presentation also. Last right slide, you will see the theories, right? You study them, then you would find no. See, I can say when you talk about cultural studies, no particular book is enough, because right in my lecture only you would have realized that there are so many theories involved into one particular study, right? So in that sense, no particular book is enough. But then also, right, if you just I would share my number in chat. You can send me hi message right on my WhatsApp. I'll share, I have some books right in PDF, I can definitely share with you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
This is my number, right? I've shared my number.
Okay, sir, got it. Thank you very much,
Right?
sir.
My pleasure.
Sir, shall we conclude? There are no
Yes,
further
yes,
questions.
yeah. If there are no questions, of course, yeah.
On behalf of the members of A.K. Singh Literary Club and the Department of English, Bhaktakavi Narsi Mehta, University, Junagadh, I extend my sincere and deepest gratitude to Dr. Dushyant Nimavat, sir, for his thought-provoking expert talk. Sir, we are immensely gratified for giving
Welcome.
us your precious time as well as knowledge and appreciate your valuable contribution. Thank you all for being here.
Pleasure is mine.
We should soon indulge in another such expert talk. Let's grow and educate together.
Thank you. Yeah.